Alright, I posted the stream. If one of the TAs could just make sure that it's up. I had to turn down the bitrate. I know none of you care. I mean, you're not streaming. But, if there are streamers out there, I had to turn down the bitrate to make it work because the internet's pretty spotty for me right now. Okay. But as long as it's up and you can see something, I guess. You can see stuff? Is it crappy? Okay, great. Cool. Well, we're gonna get started. So, how's everyone feeling after the last class? Fours? Yeah, I like the fist of five. Nice, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, fours, fives, threes. Some people, Oliver. Okay, that's good. That's good. Anything particularly horrible out of the last class? GitHub pages, maybe. Some of that stuff, kind of irritating. Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess that's. It's a side effect of taking the classes. Everyone else is disturbed. It's like a drug, right? It affects not just you, everyone else in your life. So we're going to talk about a couple things first before we get started. They have these like checkup things they want me to do at the beginning, especially in the beginning of the course, a lot, just to remind everyone that this class is, one, it's really fast. We're going to be learning a lot, and we're going to try our best to go slow and try to go through the exercises together and make sure everyone's comfortable moving on. But the reality is there are going to be times where we're going to have to just keep pushing, and some people may start to feel overwhelmed, and that's okay. We're here to help you outside of just the class sessions. So don't think that if you get behind a little bit in just the class sessions, that you're behind for good, right? We can keep, we can catch you up. We can get back to where we need to be, and we'll make it work. But it's fast. It's daunting. There's a lot of info we're going to be taking in over the next 6 months. It's just what it is. There's a lot to cover, and there's a lot to being a web developer, right? So we'll get there, though. I talked a little bit for the people that were here before class that a lot of times people ask for books and resources to help, and there's not really an all-encompassing book for doing this job and covering the stuff that we're covering in class. There's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of books, right? So a couple that might be useful here for us, John Duckett on Amazon, if you just search for John Duckett. He has some books on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and we're going to be doing all of that stuff. They're pretty good. People seem to recommend them. I've personally read the HTML, CSS one back in the day. I skimmed it. You know, it seemed like it was good. It was nice. It's a real nice book. Pretty easy to follow. So they're good ones. You could probably find them pretty cheap somewhere. I mean, those say for the paperback it's only $11.50 for the HTML, CSS one, so that's true. It's not terrible, right? I do recommend for programming books. Me personally, I don't like using them on my Kindle. A lot of times I like to follow examples or work with them and have like bookmark, pages and stuff, and it just becomes a mess to have to like swipe through this thing all the time. That's just me. You may have a better method for it. We'll see. So I try to get paperback books. So I have a stack. I have like 50 or 60 of these books at home. My wife's like, "What the hell are you doing with all this?" Another one that's pretty good when we start getting to JavaScript is You Don't Know JS. If you just Google You Don't Know JS and then put GitHub at the end, you'll get to the GitHub page. It's free. It's online. Some guy decided to make it just because he's a nice guy, and you can support him on Patreon if you want. But the books are pretty good. They'll go over basics of JavaScript all the way to more advanced JavaScript that we're going to be covering in the class. So it's just a good resource. Pick up if you're interested in starting a JavaScript journey now before we get to it. Great. A great place to start. So there are resources out there you can find, and you can do some perusing and find some yourselves, maybe share them with the class if you find one you really like. There's a ton out there. There's a ton of free stuff, so I always say if you're going to look for books, look for the free version first, or look for a free type of that book first that people regard as a good resource, because with programming, open source is a big deal. A lot of people like open source, so therefore there's a lot of open source resources to help you learn. So spending money and learning programming is getting to the point where, frankly, it's not becoming useful, especially once you get past the very beginner phases of programming, right? So in a month or so, buying stuff is going to be the last thing you should all be looking for, because, frankly, you'll be attuned enough at that point to Google what you need to figure out, or at least you'll be getting there. So something to consider. But these books by John Duckett are still good if you're interested in picking up books, right? Other than that, the majority of this class is just doing your homework, doing the exercises, which you can get to and you can do them over and over again because they're in GitLab, and doing any of the reading or watching any of the videos that we post for you at the end of the weeks. It's all good stuff. We have all this content that's been created for us that we get to teach, so it's there for you to help you. Also, the homework is pretty hard, generally. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be everything you've done that week bundled into one, and so starting it before you're super comfortable with that week, it's hard. It's real hard, and even at the end of the week, it's probably still hard because, you know, you may be more comfortable, but you're not an expert yet, right? So, and that's the point. It's hard. It takes time, and that's okay. Yeah, it's all repetition. Exactly right. As with everything, you'll eventually just start to pick it up. And if you ever get to a point in your homework where you're spending 2-3 hours and you're on one part of the homework and you just can't seem to get past a brick wall, I would stop that section, move to something else, because usually you can do a lot of stuff in parallel, right? And then ask us, or ask your classmates, or ask someone for help. Just, you'd be surprised, even if you're a really seasoned developer, how sometimes a problem will come up that you're like, this is cake, right? You get into the problem and you're just like, I cannot solve it for the life of me. And you just bounce off some, you know, ideas of someone else, and you have a solution 5 minutes later, and you're like, wow, I should have thought of that. It happens all the time. So use your peers, use us to kind of, you know, solve these problems, because they're going to happen, and it's not going to be very fun. And you can work effectively in partners, right? You obviously got to turn your own work. Don't copy each other. But if you work together and you're collaborating, that's fine. That's what you do every day at the workplace. Almost no one works in isolation, even the best of the best. So, here's what it is. Any questions on anything before we get started class? What's up, Mommy?
What are the ducks?
The ducks? That, I don't know.
Yell at.
Yeah, it's the, okay. What I heard from other people that Jason said is it's like the rubber duck debugging or whatever, where it's rubber ducking, where you're talking to someone and as you say it out loud, you kind of think, oh, wait, you know, that's what it is. I just said it, right? And you kind of pick up on it. Does it work with a rubber duck? I don't know. They don't give you shit back, that's for sure. So they're not like, well, you're an idiot for not thinking of that. And you're like, oh, okay. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you can do that too, you know, if you've got friends or whatever, you know, just tell them what you learned, and sometimes they'll be like, I don't know what you're saying, and you're like, but I figured it out, and it's cool. Okay, so any other questions on anything before we get started? Cool. Well, we're going to talk a lot more about CSS today. Continue on with that. One of the big things we're going to start with, if I can drag this window, is typography. So they pick the worst colors for these. So we have a CSS class we're going over, and they pick a dark black and a dark blue. You're like, come on, guys. Okay, so we're going to talk about typography a little bit. So typography is effectively your fonts and your language, right, that's on your page, and how that plays a really big role in the way your page looks and the style of your page, and the style of your HTML, whatever. It's super important, and there's some rules about it that you can follow that are generally good rules, and you should try to follow them. So some of the simple ones are line height, distance between lines of text on a page. Usually 1.5 times the font is generally what I see when I work with like our UX designers, and it looks good most of the time, you know. So font size, you should think about the size of the lettering. You should think about how big it'll look on, like, you know, a mobile phone, stuff like that, right? So 16 pics, that's 16 pixels. That's usually a good size for most modern pages for your general text. You can do smaller and subtext. You can do bigger and headers. Whatever, play with it. You'll figure out something you really like. I don't know what this link is, so why don't we open it? Hopefully it's not something dangerous. I hope they don't put weird, dangerous stuff in our slides. That freaked me out. Go ahead, check that out. Oh, crap. I'm going to close that. Goodbye. Alright. Looks like this is probably a little article, so I'll link this out. We're not going to read it together, but it's another resource for you on typography and font size. So linked. Go ahead and check that out during the exercise when we get there. Let's open up the slides again. There they are. Line length. You don't want your lines to be too long for lots of reasons. One is just general readability. You don't want your line to take up the whole page, and you can think about when your page starts to shrink on smaller browsers, and especially on mobile, which is increasingly important these days, right? Most of us spend a lot of time on our mobile phones. I know probably 50% of my internet browsing is on this when I'm just sitting there at the table or sitting on the couch watching TV. I'm like, oh, I need to look this up, right? Or you're just not by a computer. So thinking about how much space you want on your page is definitely really important. 50 to 75 characters on a desktop is good because it won't make it too cramped. And then obviously as your browser gets smaller, you'll kind of see how you'd want that to look. Now, by no means am I an expert on UX design, so I'm just reading their slides right now because I don't know. I've seen people do all kinds of crazy things, and this isn't really my forte. Here's another link I'll go ahead and Slack out for y'all and you can take a look at. But you can notice over time as you have more text in single lines, it starts to look messy and it looks like there's just a lot going on. Letter spacing too, avoid cramping, make sure you don't have any styles in there that or fonts that kind of smash too much together. It'll be hard to read and kind of ugly. And sans serif versus serif. Does anyone know the difference between those two? Oh, okay, it says they're right there. Sans, they're serifs, no tails. Alright, so serif fonts are horrible. That's just the way I feel. I think they're ugly in almost every case, except for specific like headers. Maybe they're okay. I personally hate them. If you like them, I'm sorry. So line height versus the fonts and stuff. Just because one thing about fonts that really, really sucks is they're not really a standard size. So monospace fonts are great because they generally are a standard size and there's standard spacing of all the letters, so on and so forth. And they're like the programmer's dream, right? You can say, I know exactly how wide something needs to be based off of the characters. But most other fonts aren't like that, especially serif fonts, which really sucks. So leading spaces and stuff can change based off of the font. The space between characters can change. Font size meaning can change. It's something you really have to pay attention to when you pick a font. Google Fonts, I think, has some examples, and we're going to use this a little bit later, of like what they could look like. And as you pick a font you can kind of see an example of what it would look like and kind of get a feel for the spacing and the way it works. And remember, just picking a font isn't as easy as just picking a font you think is cool. It's kind of got to go with the theme of your page. It's got to flow, right? So serif for sans serif, if you couldn't picture it, Times New Roman versus anything that's not ugly. So those are the two differences. Sans serif, way better. It's just cleaner. I'm big into clean, straight lines, right? So that's why I think I like it. Okay, so we're going to get to our first assignment. I'll pull up the instructions here. It's assignment number 7, I believe, in your GitLab. Let me make sure that's the case. Yeah, CSS typography. There's a README in there. I'm going to pull the README up right here so we'll all be able to see it. If I go to activities, you'll find number 7, CSS typography, and here's the README, and I will blow that up a little bit. Boom. Okay, so there's an HTML template file in there that you're going to use. Go ahead and open that first in your browser, see what it looks like. And then you're going to be adding some styles in an external style sheet, okay? So I don't want it inline. I don't want it in your header or your head tag. It needs to be its own .css file. You want to change font families, font size, weights, line heights, play with stuff, kind of see what it looks like. And if you finish early, you can check out this typeplate.com and see if you could integrate typeplate in. Otherwise, you can just play around with different fonts and what looks aesthetically pleasing to you. So spend about 10 minutes or so doing that, and then we'll go ahead and we'll go over it. question? What's up? Ah, you forgot the link tab? Link HTML. So, if you forgot exactly how to do the link tags, which is more than likely because I always forget it. I mean, I can never remember how to use a link tag because what? You set it up one time. That is an anchor tag. That is not what I meant. Here is an example for you. Yep, you need the link tag, not the A tag, remember. Probably shouldn't tell you that because this is your assignment, but... So, W3 Schools is okay if you want to see basic stuff. I'm going to take this away now. You can Google it yourself. It's okay if you want to use basic stuff. There's another one called the Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN. That's the one you really want to use if you want actual information about anything. W3 Schools is like the kiddie version, and they make mistakes. It's better now. It used to be a joke. They've changed a lot of it. But it's okay if you want to see an example really quick. Just don't read into the text too much, because you have no idea what they're going to say.
Did you say this was activity 7? My activity 7 says relative paths.
Are you in week 1? You want to go to week 2. In week 2 in GitLab, there should be CSS typography. You don't have the week 2? You might have to pull it down.
And you can look at another CSS file as an example if you have access to it. So look at that font family. start with that.
That's good. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Excuse me, thank
You
you.
know, it's one small thing. It's just a thing. That's, let's say, 30. That bad boy. Cool.
So, and I only made you look it up just so you could go through
No,
the
that was
exercise of
perfect.
pulling up the file and knowing that.
What am I doing wrong?
So let's go back to your HTML and read through the instructions. So they want you to change the font family in the document p tag to include Lucinda Quick Sans Pro. Okay. So, yeah. And then the other thing to remember too is there's these, so you're gonna change something in each and every one of those. So they're gonna need a class now.
Okay.
So keep that in mind too. When you're applying something like font family broadly across the board,
It may not.
it may not work the way you think it does.
Okay, so let's get the CSS is still probably the toughest thing.
It is,
so
it's,
far.
yeah, and that's okay.
Let's say I want to do H1, right?
Yep.
Let's say I want to do that. Font family. CSS. Lucida Sans Pro. Right? Cool. What's over? Is that yeah, that's okay. I guess. Should I have all of them or should I just?
I think you wanna do just the one that
Just the
they're
one.
saying.
Just the same. So I can call that out, right?
Yep, just delete that and then six rows.
Oh, I got you. That's a family? Or is that? Is it a hierarchy? Is it like family type?
Nope.
Let's see, let's try it again.
Why are you doing the open?
Oh, this. Oh, wait.
No.
Okay. That is. Yep. Wait.
Did you? Ah,
Dang.
that shouldn't make a difference,
No?
especially based on what
Well,
we were talking about earlier.
yeah, so there's.
Well, for now, you can't, it's not finding that font, you can,
Let's see this now.
you have it right, it's just not finding that font.
How's Jake condescend?
Give you one more minute, so wrap up what you're doing and then we'll talk about it.
See what it does, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, at least you're getting closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I taught you how to do semicolon, that's a big deal. I feel like we've grown together.
That was a key. That was key.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about this. Fist of 5, how we feeling on it? Got some 5s, got some 2s, got some 3s. Okay, cool. All over the board. All right, cool. So, you start the activity, you go ahead and you open it up. This is what you get in your browser, right? Kind of boring. Few different sizes, but they're probably from the H1s and stuff like that, right? They're not actually styled. The first thing we want to do is create an external CSS file, right? So we go ahead and go in, whoops, don't need a folder. Go ahead and go to the folder. We make a style.css, no problem. And then we need to link it. Who remembers how to link? Link?
H
Type? Do we need type?
No.
No, we don't need type. Screw type.
Nope, href. Close
Is this a self-closing one? Like that? Or is it just closed? I can never remember. Let's cheat. Oh, wow, look at that. Okay, yeah, so this is how you link, right? So simple. The type, why don't we just keep the type out for now? We were talking about that a little bit before class, probably for older browser support. You don't need it anymore. So if it's easier to remember just the two things you need, just remember the two things. href, you got to tell us where the file is, and rel style sheet, you got to tell us what the file is, right? Those are the two things you need. And as long as it's a link tag, you're good to go. So we linked it up, we're good. Why don't we just go ahead and skip on to the finished solution, where basically we wanted to create some styles that would change the font weight, the font family, so on and so forth. So here are our basic classes, right? So we all remember the basic selectors. We have an element for P, and then we have thought1, thought2, thought3, which are classes. Exactly, nice one. And then we have font weight, font size, and line height, okay? So if we go ahead and we go back to the browser, so this is the crappy original one, unstyled, straight out of the 90s, and this is the high-tech, straight out of the 2000s, awesome version, right? And you can see we've got the different font family, we have the different line sizes, the different font sizes, bolding, all kinds of fun stuff. Any questions on this? Playing with the font properties, right, for CSS? So what was the hardest part of this exercise? Someone who maybe had a tough time is willing to say. So just remembering the details probably at this point? Remember the type CSS and stuff? Yeah. Remembering the selectors. I think at this point, for most of us, it's probably just remembering those little details is really irritating still, right? Because it's not been hammered in, right? Is there any of this, the CSS or the HTML or whatever that anyone wants a little bit more explanation on before we move on? Yeah, what's up?
Within the HTML, just like basically where to put like where it says, put add class here.
Where to put the link tag? Why did we put it there?
Not like the link tag, so like right below where it says like add class here, just like where I can just add it.
Right here?
So that's done, and then for
Okay.
example, like the first paragraph after the H4, where can I, or like what can I type here basically?
What can you type here? In terms of like the CSS classes and stuff?
On the unsolved one, like it says add a class to the paragraph.
Add a class here. Bold the text. Okay, that's a good question. So how would we add a class to this P tag?
Space class equals class name.
Whatever you did on your style sheet.
So they did thought1, right? So let's just call it thought1. That's how we add in a class. Now there's an important thing to remember here that can trip people up. You have to use quotes. Double quotes, single quotes, don't care, doesn't matter. But pick one, you need to wrap it in quotes. It has to be a string. And we'll learn more about strings as we go on. Funny thing about strings, now this is kind of a slight tangent, but I was asking my wife the other day, who's not a programmer, I was like, are strings a concept outside of programming? I've been doing it for long enough now, I can't even remember if people know what that is when I say string. Like, it's just one of those things. So, if there's ever something that I don't explain enough when we're doing this, let me know, because I might just gloss over it, because I'm like, oh, intrinsically, everyone knows what a string is, right? Yeah, but you probably don't. Anyway, answer your question?
Yeah.
So where would I put then, Alex, the class on this H4?
We could, well,
Yeah, right there. Wow.
can we just break it open right there and just add in class equals dot two?
Dot 2?
Yeah.
Like that? Is that would that be valid?
Or I said thought two.
Oh, thought 2. Sorry.
Yeah.
Would that be valid?
No.
What's not valid about that?
With quotations.
The quotations, exactly. Nice. That's awesome, man. Cool. Now, another trick question. What happens if I put class right here? What happens? What class is applied to that H4?
Well, if you don't set, well, it's nothing unless you put it for like number 3. You can leave it there, but
So if I had a, say I had a thought3 defined in my CSS file, and a thought2 defined, what would the final class be? What would the style be? Would it be from Thought 2, Thought 3, or both?
Both if they don't interchange, right?
Both if they don't interchange?
If they don't override one another.
Supposed to be Thought 3.
Supposed to be Thought 3? It's Thought 2. Why is it Thought 2?
All of them start with the close.
Because this is the closing element. Closing element has no attributes. It just closes your HTML element. So it's Thought 2. That's a trick. So don't do that. Cool. Any other questions on this before we move on? Yeah, what's up, Paul?
I made mine divs instead.
That's fine. You can make them divs and you can style them however you want. The thing is, so there's this idea of semantic HTML, right? With text, I probably wouldn't just use a div, but a lot of times people use something called a span. And the real difference is a div is a generic block level container. So if we look at like block level versus inline, have we covered that already in class? Block level versus inline? Right, so a div is a generic container that's block level, which means that it'll be on its own section in the page, and if you put another block level component, it would go below it. Okay? Block level components, they stack. They don't go next to each other unless you use these crazy things called floats. Line level components, and a span is the line level component that's equivalent to a div. They can be next to each other, so they'd be like text, right? And they'll wrap with the page and do all that fun stuff. So a div is a generic block level container. A span's a generic line level container. P tags are technically block level, but we use them as text. Spans, though, because they're line level, people use those as text. So it's okay that you did divs. You could also use spans. You could also use Ps, H1s, H2s, H3s, whatever. There's like a little bit of a different semantic meaning to your HTML depending on which one you use. And if you care about semantic HTML, then you use the P tags and stuff, right? If you don't care, which most people really don't, then you use whatever the hell is convenient at the time. And it'll be a span or a div, usually. Cool. Any other questions? It's a good one. Thank you. All right, let's move on. Let me close this. Don't need it. So one of the things we're going to talk about are Google Fonts. You can add custom fonts to your... If you go to fonts.google.com, you can add custom fonts to your web pages. And is it Charlie?
Yeah.
Awesome, I got it. As Charlie was talking about earlier, it used to be you have to download stuff and have like custom stuff you link to, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to do fonts. But these days, you can just kind of go to Google Fonts or another font provider, and you can decide what fonts look really cool today, and they'll give you a special link that you can use to add the fonts. So if we go ahead and we say, okay, Roboto's cool, and you can actually play with it. You can like come in here, test, and change the sizes and all kinds of things. Make it bold or whatever, slightly bold. Like you can do a bunch on just this fonts.google.com. So I recommend you play with it, and we're gonna for our next assignment. You're like, okay, I like Roboto. I'm gonna take Open Sans. I want, what is this, Lato? Okay, so I've got 3 cool fonts that I want, and I want to use them in my application. And the way font families work is you define one. If that font doesn't exist, it'll go to the next one. If that font doesn't exist, it'll go to the next one. And you basically end with a very generic font like serif or sans serif, okay? So if you have a bunch of sans serif fonts, which I just picked 3 sans serif fonts, and neither one of these 3 exists, then we can just say we're going to use a sans serif. And you denote this in your CSS by comma delimiting them. So you can see right here, I have 3 font family declarations. Kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can blow it up. Cool. 3 font family declarations. It says font family Roboto, comma sans serif. That's basically saying if I can't get to Roboto, then I'm just going to use the default sans serif for your browser. Okay, and that's how you would specify it. It also gives you this sweet link tag. And this link tag is our cheat way to get these fonts into our HTML page, okay? So you can literally, after I selected those 3, open up this thing. I can copy this link tag. Let me go ahead and open up the example code that we're going to be working with. I have this regular old HTML page, nothing fancy. And I'm like, okay, well, there's styles, that's cool. But I'm going to go ahead and put this link that Google Fonts gave me. It allows me to use, say, Roboto. And then I'm going to go ahead and go into my styles. And I'm just going to make everything in the body. Use Roboto and then sans serif. Okay? And then let me go ahead and open this. And then if you look over my Google Fonts, let's look at Roboto, you can see I've got the cool Roboto text. So it seems, right? So it's like a sweet way that you can just integrate these fonts super clean, super easy, right into your HTML without like really any problems whatsoever. If I want to go ahead and use one of the other ones, so Lato, whatever it is another one I had, I can go ahead and let's just create a separate class. We'll just do it for H1. So we'll say on my H1s, I want to do, font family, Lato plus, I'm just pressing things now. And then we'll go ahead and do our sans serif. I'll open up the browser again. We'll just go ahead and refresh. Well, that didn't do much, did it? They look probably very much the same. And let's go ahead and open up our Chrome DevTools to make sure they're even applied. Good old debugging. So here's our, that's an H3, that's why. Do I even have an H1? Oh, here it is. We can go ahead and look at the font family. Yep, and it's the Lato, so it is changed. This one changed. I was looking at the wrong one. I was looking at this one. And if we go ahead and go like our H3, you can see that the font family is just by default Roboto here, right? So I know it's kind of hard to see down there in the corner. Let me see if I can move it. If you're ever in doubt that something didn't quite work the way you wanted it to, you can go ahead and open the Chrome DevTools and you can verify that they worked exactly the way you wanted them to. Boop. So if we open up the DevTools, take up the entire page, let's go ahead and look at it again. Our H1, right, we applied that Lato. You can see it's like, well, Roboto's the default, but you're like, screw that, man. I'm going to use this other cool font on this H1. But on this H3, it just inherits from the default. And that's a good way to do your test, right? In case visually they're not different enough, like these are very similar. So you can check it out. So, any questions on what I just did? You're going to be doing it here in a moment. Okay, so we want to do activity number 8, Google Font Demo. I'll go ahead and open the README here. You got about 10 minutes or so to work on that. And then we'll talk about it a little bit. So you can either reuse the styles that we just had for the last activity, or you can open up the examples that we've got now, and you can start fresh, download some fonts, go ahead and integrate them. If you finish really early or you want something else to do, go ahead and Google Font Awesome and see if you can't get Font Awesome also into your package. That would, or into your HTML page. That would be really cool. What's up?
For the CSS, when I do the font family, it's not turning blue, it just stays white. Does it work the first time?
So if you look at the end of your font size, you miss it. Those semicolons, they're killer. So if you're missing a semicolon on any of those lines, it will cause problems. And that's a good way to check, because VS Code will offer. Font Awesome, what is it? So it allows you to add these cool icons, basically like minimalistic icons. I'll pull it up here. You can. You can if you want. They also have CDN links just like Google Fonts. So, question from Tony. What is Font Awesome? Let me just open that up. Font Awesome. Come on. Font Awesome is icons easily done, right? Icons easy done, whatever. But basically, it allows you to select some icons that you like, and you can create a CDN link that allows you to access those icons. And that's how you get those cool minimalistic icons that you see in a lot of modern web pages. Font Awesome is a really great place for them, and a lot of them are free, which is even cooler. So if you get there, it's a fun thing to play with as well.
So it's like a logo.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, they're symbols for stuff. You know, there might be a box, there might be like an X or the hamburger menus and stuff like that. Sometimes they'll have. I think you can get to like the Facebook icon and the Twitter icon. So if you ever see a website where it's like Facebook, Twitter, email, LinkedIn, you can get them from there. Yeah. Is there? I don't think there's anyone streaming, is there? Did anyone not? Stephanie, can you Slack me anyone who didn't sign in? What about Andy? Check bootcamp spot. just realized that I didn't start recording, so the first 45 minutes of class don't exist. Just in case you wanted to like to watch them. The stream will actually be saved on my YouTube channel, so I'll probably be able to download that too and get that to you guys. It won't be as good quality, but it'll exist. What's up, man?
Don't get stressed, that won't help. Okay? So if you go back to the top of your HTML file, there, remember when you're adding this style sheet, right, you have to put a link to it, so that you have to have a link to your actual style sheet. So just go back to your local font that you're doing. You need that link in your HTML.
Oh, you have none. Yeah. Oh, where?
Find the local link that you have for the other style sheet.
So just
And then go back and
No, when you go to the page,
you can just name, give them whatever. And then those don't even have classes, so.
Does anyone have any issues or anything they want to ask about?
I'm working on the font awesome.
You're working on the Font Awesome stuff?
what's its font name?
The Font Awesome? It's icons and stuff.
Another way to do
No, no,
what
no,
you
what do you-
just
what do
did,
you- what's its
if you
name?
wanna just apply
The name of the icon?
like take that
Yeah, how
one
do you
font,
find it?
everything in your HTML, you don't have
Find
to do it.
font family.
You can just apply it.
So you, when you see a font like this, underneath it you can see like the,
Oh, okay. I didn't go that. So.
yeah, so you have to like pick the name, then it's usually like FA name or something. When you pick a couple,
Same class name.
Or, so like say it would change them all, to be the same name, so if I do CSS, I can organize it.
there's a how to use. You'll get the CDN.
Go to the CDN.
Yeah, you'll want the CDN, and then it tells you. It should tell you how to add them in.
I think,
Put the same information in multiple.
It's usually like FA and then FA dash the name or something like that. I'm trying to look.
You don't wanna do it in every single class. If you go back to your HTML, see how, all of this is wrapped in a body tag?
Yeah. Oh, you just do body. So you just put.
And you may need to remove the other styling that you have. So go back to your CSS and where you have font two. Does that work for you? And just type body and do a dot.
So far.
Because it's not a
What
class,
do
it's
you
a
mean?
class.
I mean, I guess that's the first step, right?
We're at the
You're
right parking
physically
lot.
here.
We're at the mall. We don't know
I
what
don't have
store.
to. I don't have to set the class.
You getting
Yeah. Well,
new stuff?
yeah, we did the first one.
And you can do body class equals, but you don't have to. You can just apply it to. You could if you
All right.
wanted to, but you don't.
So, if anyone's got any questions, now's the time to ask. What's up?
So, it's listed as
Yeah, so once you find the one you want, click on it, and it'll give you
icon
Okay, that's what I was
FAS space, FA dash. How is that a class with a space in it? Do you have class with spaces in it?
That's a good question. How is it a class with a space in it? You can have multiple classes and they're space delimited. You can have as many well, you can have up to 255 classes or something. If you have that many though, please do not work on my projects. Yeah, you can have as many as you want. 15-minute break. Be back around 7:40.
I have another awesome question.
Sure.
So can you make them wider?
Yeah, you can make the container wider and they'll scale with it. So if you have an icon like an eye or whatever or a span, you just make that bigger and it'll get bigger too. Or the font size. You can make the font size bigger. Yeah, be back at 7:40. So I'll give you 17 minutes. Yeah, if you click on the individual icon, it'll tell you how to actually use it. It's usually like FA something and then space FA dash the name of the icon.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see it pop up once you start. You do font weight and then hit enter, it'll show the auto show you some of them. Oh, good.
I did. Well, I was trying to do width and height. I was trying to make that bigger. But yeah, there's my font. I didn't think it was a font, though. I thought it was a picture. So I think width and font.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
I think width and height doesn't apply.
Alright.
What's up, man?
Homework.
Sure.
I'm pretty much just done with it. I was working on the portfolio page yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Do we have to make it look exactly like that to turn it in, or can we design it
Get,
that way?
you can. That's a really good question for Stephanie, since they're going to be doing most of it. So, you want to get. Technically, you want to get as close to
The layout?
the layout as possible. But if you change the colors or whatever, that's cool. The way I'll talk with her to see what she wants. Like, basically, the way I think it maybe should be done is like close to the portfolio. And if you want to do something wild and crazy and do your own style, if it looks good and you did a good job, then like awesome.
Can I show it to you real fast?
Yeah, sure.
Commuting, getting ready for work, like how much time I would spend on homework, how much time in class, like every single thing I had to do. I would write out how much time it takes to figure out how much time I would have to sleep if I got in enough hours, and then like I would calculate my sleep time so that if I did end up no seriously I calculated all that and then if I had to log out there and have any years or something, I would be like, okay, well this week I missed out on like this many hours of sleep, so I'm gonna try and sleep like work as many extra hours so I have to it's a
Yeah, that one's gonna trip people up. You want the icon, the actual element.
I'm trying to figure out how to
my computer kind of just exploded, so
Okay.
do I just
You have a few options. You can hang out in class and watch if you want. You can watch the recording later. You can come to class tomorrow for the second half
okay.
if you want to do that too. Once you get your computer fixed.
Okay.
So it's course is kind of yours. There's a few ways you can take care of it. Just let me know what you want to do,
Okay.
and we'll go from there. And it's Matt. Okay, cool.
I thought I did.
top of the 7 settings. And then right down on the network it says destination cache. All dev tools and network.
Mine's about that age. I don't know how old you guys are.
Like my pages back and
Right, so when you have dev tools open, it has an option to disable all of it. But then without the dev tools.
right.
So it's still not monitoring.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't just want to reset my cache all the way.
I know we used to be able to update all the old
It's like what P&L get blown up. I don't know. Just $2,000 laptop.
Like on my CSS and everything, it's fine. And when I open it up, you're supposed to like inspect all the footer. It's supposed to see
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
fine.
long.
This is.
That's weird. Oh wait, okay, no, yeah. So my computer is cached and then I updates.
Yeah.
I was on the phone today and I was
Never
figuring
mind.
stuff out and I was like,
There's a
tomorrow I gotta call him.
Okay, so yeah, you're right, you're right about that. Like cache for the last hour. 11. Did you clear your cache with the dev tools on Monday?
Yes.
How?
Go ahead and open your dev tools, and if you long press on the refresh button, there's an empty cache and hard reload. That's what you want to do.
Long press on the reload?
Yeah, so there's like a refresh in Chrome, little like, I don't know, half circle with the arrow, right? Hold it, and a drop down opens up, and one of the options is to empty cache and reload, and you want to use that.
But you have to have dev tools open to do that?
To do that one, yeah. Otherwise, you can do, for you, Control F5 on Windows does a hard reload of the cache, but I don't think it's the same one.
Okay.
I think that one's a little bit more intense, so.
Yeah, hard reload. That's all. Yeah, there's no sticks though. I can't look at
Text decoration. Link, href. This is think so. It's kind of annoying. Yeah, like to get a drink or whatever, you gotta like walk to the gas station or something. It's kind of a pain in the ass. Should petition for it. Alright, we're gonna get started in a couple of minutes. We'll give you a couple more minutes to relax. Everyone's tired. It's the end of the day. Unless it's not, unless you work nights or something. That's cool. Okay. Alright, how's everyone feeling? Fist of 5 today. How are we feeling about today? Some 3s, lots of 5s. Got some 2s. Nice, okay, okay. So we're doing alright today as a whole. That's good. Okay, we're going to talk about something new with CSS we haven't seen yet called pseudo-styles. Does anyone know what a pseudo-style is? What? Who said that? What'd you say? Fake? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of right, actually. So, pseudo, they're kind of fake, right? They're not really part of CSS or your elements, but they are, I don't know, they're weird. There's a special syntax you'll see sometimes in CSS, right? And before I look at that, I want to show you something. So I've got this little test page I made. It's really not fancy, right? It's just a little link that doesn't go anywhere. I visited it, so it's purple, right? Nothing going on. But I have this class I can add, just called my class, or I think I called it my link. Yeah, I called it my link. So I go ahead and I have my link. I just do a nice refresh, and you'll notice it's hard to tell on this screen, but as I hover over it, it's actually red. It's no longer the purple color, right? It's red. And then if I hold down and click it, it turns green. And when I let go, it goes back to the normal purple. So obviously I changed some styles. But to change that in CSS, you can't just change a style. There's not like a CSS property for like hover color or something. There's something called pseudo selectors, and you can put styles on these pseudo selectors. And why they're called pseudo selectors is they're part of something that you don't get to manipulate. So you're like selecting something that's not actually there, right? So we're selecting the hover activity of a link. And when we hover over it, it turns red, and I turn off the underlines, right? I get rid of them. And when it's active, or I'm clicking on it, right, it's going to turn green. Or say you have a visited link, right? It's purple by default. We can go ahead and do visited, and we can change the color to just black, and we can do text decorations, and we can turn them off, right? Because we are tricky like that, and we're going to go ahead and hide any links you've been to so you can never go to them again. So now you can see the text decoration didn't seem to apply, but it did turn black. So I probably spelled something wrong. But anyway, you can see, oh, something crazy happened. What did I do? Broke something. Did I spell something wrong? Whatever. Don't worry about that one. There's a visited, but maybe you need double selectors. I don't know. Anyway, there are these special selectors, and the way you get to them is with this colon. You do the colon and then the name of the property to get to it. Okay? And there's a bunch of them. There's not just hover and active. There's also a focus. So we'll do focus. Does anyone have any idea what focus is going to do?
Select it first.
Select it first? What do you mean?
Means it's autofocus, so it's the one that's going to be highlighted or selected when you open the page. I mean, that's what focus is in code in Java or C++.
Right, it's the one that you're highlighted, right? So you can hit the tab, and I can focus it, and you'll notice I've got the little outline, and it turned black with no text decorations. If I tab again, I'm unfocused it. I focus something else. probably the body or something in the browser URL address bar, right? So yeah, you can see I'm going between stuff in the URL address bar and then the elements on the page. And when I do that, because I have this cool pseudo selector, I can change what it looks like. So you can do all kinds of things. You can get rid of the, get rid of or add italics when you hover over a link, or you can make them big, or you can change the color, whatever. You can imagine these are really, really powerful, right? And you can do all kinds of things with them. I'm going to send you a link, a good link, to the pseudo classes. Now this is off of the Mozilla Developer Network, so this is MDN, like I said earlier, and it shows this link will have all of the potential pseudo selector classes. If you go in there and you scroll down a little bit, tell you everything. If you want to research them more and learn about some of the cool things you can do. What we're going to do is spend the next 15 minutes doing another activity. It's going to be activity number 9, pseudo classes. So it's going to be very similar to some of the other activities we've done, but now we're adding pseudo classes in to our CSS as opposed to just raw CSS. So I'll open it up here. We'll go to number 9, pseudo class. Bam. Basically, we're going to play with pseudo classes, right? You're going to create a series of links and modify the pseudo classes associated with them. So we're going to change the default styles, the focus, active, hover states. You don't get any starter code on this one. So you're building your HTML from scratch, build your CSS file from scratch. Feel free to use your snippets if you remember how to do that in VS Code. It's a handy thing to do. And then extra, if you get a little further along, go ahead and discover some other ones, slack out screenshots of cool things you've done, so on and so forth. Learn about CSS transitions. So if you hover over a link, you can make it transition, right? That's a cool thing to do. What else? What else can we have y'all do? Yeah, play with those for a while. Experiment with the pseudo classes, and we'll talk in about 15 minutes. What's up? You can use the snippet. Go for it.
What is that just for?
Command Shift P, and then you'll type snippet. But remember, you have to be in an HTML file to use them.
Gotcha.
question? You looked at me like that question. Saw it in your eyes. Okay. No, the links, they're in there. If you look at your HTML, it'd be there. But if you actually want them to be a text link. Little things, man. It's the little details that you don't remember all the details yet, right? You haven't been doing it long enough.
When you first when you're in your HTML,
Yeah, you want me to open some up?
no, I've got one, so they're there, so you put in the class. Did you start right after the A?
Yes, you can. You can kind of choose. You can put them in any order, the attributes. So you could do space href, whatever, and then after the href, do space class. Or you can do the class first. It doesn't matter. There's no order. There's no order to attributes. It's a good question.
Well, I tried to hover and
Okay, cool. So I did that too.
oh my god.
I did the exact same thing when I was making the little example. This isn't working.
I'm like, I tried 3 selectors. I'm like, what is happening?
Happens all the time, man.
Of course, it's the little things.
Yeah, it's the little things that kill you forever. You'll never get past them.
And I yell at that duck.
We're actually ahead of schedule a bit today, which is kind of nice. We're like 10 minutes ahead of schedule. So we'll get to the end. If we're still ahead of schedule, you'll have the option of hanging out with us or leaving if we're still ahead. So be up to you.
So you could technically do it from your or if you were
No, I have a few. Yeah, I know, dude. It's so sick. Let's see. Alright, let's see if that is right. Nope, it's still the same.
about second to the front table. How you guys doing?
You wanna get it?
Sort of something to do like a color attribute. There should be the color slot. And now save that. And you can open up your HTML page.
What's up, Alex?
Alright, so for some reason
Go to your
I wouldn't need to do this.
Why is it not working? Go ahead and look at these other elements and tell me what's different about the way you wrote yours and the way you wrote those ones. Is it href colon? Or is it href? Same with that one.
So that's what we create there.
class equals my link.
Yes, it worked. All right. All right. Cool. Okay, so yeah.
Unless they want it to be the same. So like if you want it to still be green, then yeah, but
So speaking of class,
That looks great to me. Oh yeah, I'm still.
I got my card.
yeah.
Same as
Okay, so let me show you.
No, I'm
Okay.
gone.
Let me try
just
this
want to
one.
make sure.
Yep.
Thanks, sir.
I'll let you like try it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I love you. That's one of my favorites too.
Oh, that is so sick.
I like a clean whiteboard too.
Oh, not that. Yeah, that too.
I know.
You're gonna draw on it or what?
No.
Like get a mural going.
No, but you'll notice like all the walls are whiteboards. So eventually we'll get to eventually we'll get to a point where like we'll have projects and you'll be able to split up and you can draw all over them and
What?
we'll leave it up.
Like, that's not a song at all. I'm like,
I don't personally think there's much right now to draw,
well, alright, cool.
but I guess if you want to explain like the DOM and stuff to students, you could draw that.
Change the color red. Alright, go back to HTML. Oh.
That's my grandma.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
we went
yeah.
to our grandma would post with her.
Yeah, get an extra.
Prices right. Grandma used to be saying, but she'll sit down in front of all of them.
Get rid of that.
Yes, I put one. Correct.
No, no, no. Yeah, that's smart. Well, because it's yeah, put it back. It has to have yeah, autofill makes
Caption one usually English, two
it looks identical.
What's up, Alex?
how it's interacting with
because of that.
Oh, because you have to do. Look, see, I did my league too. I changed that one.
Okay. All right. How's everyone feeling on this? Let's do a fist of 5. How are we feeling? What's that? Everyone's feeling okay. All right. So, do you have any questions, Jacob?
Huh?
You have any questions?
I just can't really get it to work. It's a bit frustrating, but I'll figure it out later.
Okay. We'll figure it out. Cool. So we're going to take a little bit of a pivot. So we learned about pseudo-selectors, and those are cool. But you'll probably notice by this point with your HTML and CSS, it's kind of irritating to do a lot of things. It takes a lot of work. If you have a big web page and a lot of layouts, it's probably pretty complicated, and things get real messy real fast, and honestly, it just takes a long time, and no one really wants to do it because CSS really kind of sucks. So there are other ways that we can get around that. Let me go ahead and open some code here. Come on, come on. All right, we have this web page. Okay, there's a lot going on in this web page, despite what it looks like. There's a drop down, and like there's a a nice menu and a nice layout, right? It's like kind of column oriented, and it looks relatively professional. There's not a lot of content, right? But it looks pretty good. And we can actually use some community created packages to get all this done fairly easily. As a matter of fact, none of the CSS for this page was written by the creators of this page, right? They just used other people's assets and other people's CSS through the magic of the internet to make this nice layout, which is pretty cool. I'll go ahead and show you the code now. So you'll see there's no CSS file in here at all, but we have all of this crazy styling that's obviously far beyond basic HTML, and you'll see a bunch of classes that exist and a whole bunch of crazy stuff like our drop down items, right? There's literally a drop down item class, and like there's just a ton going on here. Surprisingly, but we don't have a CSS file, which is pretty interesting. Bootstrap. Why do you already know about Bootstrap?
I'm just saying.
You just saying?
It says it in the
Oh, it says Bootstrap CDN. Okay, well they give it away. So anyway, the idea here is we have CSS from somewhere else. Where does that CSS exist?
in a database.
In a database. Where?
It's like it's an open archive.
How do we get to it? There's Bootstrap links you can get from bootstrap.com. But what about our link tags, right? So the link tags they're still there in our head, but they're slightly different. There's 2 of them here. Yep, it's using an external link to a Bootstrap CSS file. And that's different. It's kind of weird, right? We actually have CSS that we didn't generate. We could just go ahead and link it on in. We've kind of seen this already, right? The Font Awesome, the Google fonts, those came from CDNs as well. So a CDN is called a Content Delivery Network. And a lot of times as you get further along in your career, they make a lot of sense because look at all the code I don't have in here that I just get access to, right? It's amazing. And as you could probably assume, the fewer lines of code you have, the less likelihood of a bug or something, or you having to fix a bunch of stuff. Like it's nice. So we can use other people's stuff. Also, you don't have to maintain the CSS if there's a problem. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. If there is a problem, the community will fix it. But if there is a problem, the community will fix it, right? So you'll get that fixed whenever you get it. But the idea about this is basically we don't have to have the CSS ourselves. We don't got to make it. We don't even got to put it on our machine. We don't got to put it anywhere special. We just put this link, and we have magical CSS that appears. Same with the Font Awesome. We just put in this link and we have Magical Font Awesome, right? Just like we did with the Font Awesome and the Google Fonts. You put in a magical link and magical stuff happens. It's amazing. So, container. I mean, the question comes up from there then, what the hell is a container? I have no idea. But it does something, right? Navbar. It must do something. It's in the class, and we have a sweet navbar. If I go ahead and open these, I'll try to open them side by side. We have this sweet navbar, right? Make this a little smaller. Okay. And that's probably this. And you'll even notice the cool thing about this is CSS is it's actually collapsed my menu for me because the page got smaller. So like we're getting a lot of power from literally zero work. You add some classes in here. We've done nothing effectively. Added some elements, added some cool classes that just come with Bootstrap, and voila, magic. It's pretty interesting. Now, what's really interesting about it is if you are super curious, this is just a link, isn't it? So why don't we copy it? Yeah, you don't even know what the classes are called, but we'll get into that. So, that link, that CDN link that has all this magical Bootstrap code in it, I just went to my browser and it opened up this jumbled mess, right? This doesn't look like a lot of fun. It's not a lot of fun. So clearly the answer to finding out how you want these classes, which is a great point, you have no idea what these classes are that we can't even use, isn't by looking at this. Now technically, I can go ahead and search, and you can find the classes. There's .container all over the place. Right, and there's a couple of other ones we saw too. Navbar. Navbar is everywhere. Yeah, I mean, this is a huge file, right? You probably don't want to skim through this yourself.
That's considered organized or unorganized?
That is a good question. Is this considered organized or unorganized? It depends on how you look at it. If you write me code like this, that is very unorganized. Shame on you. Now, if your CDN gives me a file like this, that's amazing. Good for you. And the reason why is there's something called minification in the web. So, we have bootstrap.min.css. .min doesn't technically mean anything. It's a semantic thing for me to know that that's the minified version of that file. By minified, I mean there is no extra white space. The only white space in this file is the exact white space we need to make the CSS valid. There are no extra line breaks. There's no extra anything. Everything in here is as small and as concise as it absolutely can be, which makes sense. Why does that make sense? Why would you want that? Smaller file?
It takes less time to travel over the internet.
Exactly. You want a smaller file, so it takes less time to travel over the internet. If I am servicing someone in India with a file from the United States, the fastest it can get to India is something like 60 milliseconds, because that's how fast the speed of light could get there, right? So you already have a 60 millisecond delay, even if you have the fastest internet network in the universe that literally has no interruption from anything else, which is not true. So you're probably talking about a second delay to get this stuff over there. And then if there's a huge payload of multiple megabytes, it's going to take forever to download in backwater India, right? Backwater Indiana even is going to be the same way. So, yeah. So, I mean, you want these payloads to be really small, and so we use something called minification. So looking at the links you're using for your CDN isn't necessarily a good thing. You can go in there and inspect them. You can figure out what's going on. That's fantastic. That's awesome. Or we can just cut to the chase and figure out where these come from. Bootstrap 4. We can go ahead and go to getbootstrap.com, and we can figure out how to use Bootstrap. Now, how do we know to use Bootstrap? Well, Bootstrap's pretty well known in the web development community. I didn't expect any of you to know that. But if you were professional web dev, odds are you read blogs or saw examples or whatever, and you would have come across this eventually. People like Bootstrap a lot because what Bootstrap gives you is access to easy layouts. So layouts is probably the crappiest thing you'll ever have to do in CSS. I mean, we've already played with floats, and they're just horrible, and there's a reason why nobody uses them anymore. They use things like Bootstrap to do that job for you, because why on earth am I going to spend hours doing this layout work when someone's done it for me? It's just going to save me time, right? And let's be real, we're doing this to make money at the end of the day. And if you're a contractor and you're billed by the hour, you can get this done fast. Well, okay, if you're a contractor billed by the hour and you really want to make the most of it, don't take my advice. But say you have a certain number of projects to get done, you're paid by completion, right? Well, then you're going to want something like this. It's going to do a lot of work for you. So anyway, getbootstrap.com is a great place to start, and you'll notice it's got more than just CSS. There's even JavaScript in there. We're not there yet, but it exists. And it gives you access to a whole bunch of fun stuff. So we can go ahead and take a look at some examples. Here are some example websites that were made with Bootstrap, right? So just these are some kinds of layouts that you can make, and the kinds of buttons you can get access to, and the cool elements you can get just by using Bootstrap. And literally all of this is just Bootstrap. These are the basic styles you get with Bootstrap. No extra coloring, nothing. You just get it. It's pretty rad, especially in the beginning when you just want to get things done and make them look nice, right? The people who don't use Bootstrap anymore are people who don't know it exists, or really, really, really seasoned UX designers who have their own libraries and stuff that they use. And that's rare.
It's like a template for writing your own.
Yeah, it's like a template for writing your own CSS, right? Or writing your own layouts. What's up, Nor?
So you could essentially write code for Bootstrap and then send it to them?
Yeah, you could. So Bootstrap is open source, so you could technically write Bootstrap CSS and send it to them and try to get it into Bootstrap. Sure. Will they accept it? I don't know.
So who makes the templates?
Who makes the the Bootstrap code?
Yeah.
It's a collection of people. That's a great question. We can probably go to Bootstrap GitHub. Twitter actually makes it. Pretty sure. But there's this GitHub repo called Bootstrap under TWBS, which I'm pretty sure is Twitter. This is where it comes from. You can literally contribute to it. There's a community around it, documentation about how to contribute, how to find bugs. If you get more familiar with GitHub, there's issues open, so people can post their issues. Hey, floating label example sucks, or whatever. Pull requests, so if you wanted to create your own code, try to get into Bootstrap, this is where you could add it. Completely community driven, which, like I said, is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because this work's done for you, and not only is it work done for you, you can literally go find it for free, look at the source, you can learn from it, right? You can look at this code and how they're doing all their CSS, and you can totally learn how they did it. Now, they're using Sass, but even so, if you learn the basics of Sass, you can just look at how they did everything. It's a learning example, right? The downside is it takes time for things to happen, and everyone's doing it for free, most likely. The people who are working at Twitter might be doing it on paid time, but they only get so much paid time, right? So with open source, you also have the drawback of some smaller libraries. Bootstrap isn't one of those. Don't get updated as much, right? So, but anyway, it's out there. It's for free. The community deals with it. So you can see there's a lot that we can do with Bootstrap, for sure. Now, if we go to the documentation, we can start to see how we can use it. Let's see, where are the components? Okay, so right here on the side, we have a whole bunch of information about how to use it. And one of the links I just clicked on was about layout, okay? So you'll see, it tells you a little bit about layout. And so you can already see containers. It says, hey, there's this class container. There's a little explanation about what a container is. The idea in Bootstrap is everything is inside of a container. There's this container class, everything's in it. And then everything can be parceled out into little columns or rows, right? And it's basically a 12 by 12 system. So it makes it really nice and really flexible. And you can go and read through this documentation, see oh, it's got built-in media styles. So as my screen gets smaller, it's going to change based off of that. There's a whole bunch of documentation here. It's very robust on this app, these CSS classes that you can use, and all the crazy things that they do. You can learn about the grid and how the grid works. That's that column system, and it's pretty intuitive. It's pretty easy to use. But most important, there's built-in components such as buttons and toggle buttons and all kinds of things. So for example, you can build in alerts. So say something crazy happens and you want to prompt the user up in the top left and be like, oh, you couldn't log in for whatever reason and you wanted a red box to show up really quick. You could use this red danger alert that Bootstrap defines for you, and it'll look something like this, and then you just use a nice CSS transition to show it and hide it, right? So you get a lot of stuff for free. And this is an example code of how you could use it. So literally, right here are some alerts, and right here is the code to create those alerts. You tell it, roll alert, you give it the class alert, alert primary, alert, alert secondary, alert, alert success, so on and so forth. And one thing you'll see about all these components is they have a very similar naming scheme for their class types. So it'll be something primary, something success, something danger, right? So it's pretty easy to follow that all the way down. Links, they have different links. So look at, these are nice styled links. They match the theme, right? So like you get all this for free. It's crazy. You just tell it, hey, it's an alert link, right? So we know it's in an alert, match the theme. There's all kinds of crazy things. You can look at how many components there are already. So buttons are really amazing, right? So we have the type of button, and then you tell it button, button primary, secondary, so on and so forth, and you get all these different colored buttons. So you want a green button for continue, a red button for cancel, or just a blue button for continue, or just a white button for continue, whatever. And you get that, and it's amazing. Forms have all kinds of cool stuff, so when we get to forms and like building contact forms and all that, all kinds of cool things to make them look nice. Then they have the nav bars, right? So you'll see an example nav bar looking very similar to the one we just saw. The point is, we're not going to go over all of the things Bootstrap has to offer, but there is a lot to offer, and you want to get familiar with these things. Especially, I think the next homework, and it's not the next, the one after that, are going to require Bootstrap, and you're going to want to use it in almost everything we do from here on out. Even when we get to React and stuff, you can still use Bootstrap, which is crazy. So it's extremely powerful. But you have a question?
So basically just kind of streamlines everything.
It streamlines your basic design, right? So it gives you a lot of basic design things for free, and then you can go ahead and there's like theme generators that work with Bootstrap, and you can download the special themes. Yeah, yeah, it's really nice. Let's see how exactly we can use this, though. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new HTML file. We'll just call it test.html because I'm very good at naming things. I'm going to insert my snippet, get things going, right? I'm not going to put any of my own CSS in this bad boy. We know we are just going to go ahead and we're going to copy this. Oh, there you go. Copy. Nice. They're thinking ahead. Good for them. We're going to just go ahead and paste this crazy long link. Alright, so now we can see the HTML, right? So let's make a button. And then let's make another button. And we'll bootstrap it, right? We'll make this one even better. So let me go ahead and open this. Cool. So we have our two buttons. Here's our basic one. And by simply adding in these classes, button and button primary, I have this really cool blue button that has like nice styling and, you know, has a little cursor for my hand and like all kinds of crazy stuff for free.
That's it?
That's it. It's that easy.
How would you change the font in it? What if you wanted to change the font or change the color of the font or something? How would,
That's a good question.
yeah, or the pseudo thing. You know?
How would I change the font and all that? Well, here's the thing. So you can do that. You can try to do it, brute force it manually, and you can apply your own class. So we could go ahead, and I'm going to cheat. I'm not going to make a file really quick. I'm just going to make a style. Button text. Right, and we can make the color red. That is. And we're going to go ahead and apply this. We'll see what it does. So you can still change the CSS properties, but the thing is, with Bootstrap, well what's the point is one, but two, there are some CSS properties that are built into Bootstrap that you can't change because they're going to be overridden with Bootstrap, and Bootstrap's going to take priority because of the way they built it. So you can't change everything, but you can change some things if you really feel so inclined. What I recommend you do instead is find a Bootstrap theme generator, pick out some colors you like, and they will give you the custom-made Bootstrap code with your colors. So it's pretty easy to find those.
Okay.
You have a question?
No.
No? Okay.
You kind of answered it.
Okay, cool. So, any questions on this crazy stuff?
Yeah, so you just use the website's, the content on the side to see where...
The Content Delivery Network link? Or are you talking about navigating
like
the
on
Bootstrap?
their website, yeah, to see what classes they specifically offer.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Oh, man. That is not the one I wanted. Let me find that page. Okay. Yeah, so over here, I went to components. And components is literally a gigantic list of whatever. Oh.
Everything it does.
Yeah, and you can literally find, hey, I want to drop down, I'm going to need these classes, right? Drop down menu, drop down item, and it'll explain them at some point all the way. It tells you about some of the stuff it does. Hey, it does position relative, so on and so forth, and so that kind of gives you a hint as to the things you can't change.
And it also shows you an example of what it would look like.
It always shows you an example. You can literally copy it, paste it into yours, and then make changes of content or whatever you need to do, right? So Bootstrap's extraordinarily friendly. It even gives you an example, a rendered example of what it does, which is really nice, right? So getbootstrap.com is the one you want, and you want version 4. From now on, you always want version 4. 4.1 doesn't matter. Anything with at least 4. Starting with 4. It doesn't matter what the other ones are, but you need that 4, right?
Do we need to download it?
You don't need to download it. You can use that CDN link. So when you come to this page, and that's what you're always going to want to use. It's way easier. And you just go to documentation. First thing is CSS. Copy paste this link into the head of your HTML, and voila. Now there's JavaScript in there too. You can copy all this, and that'll be like transitions and like crunching when you get small screens and stuff. Jaime?
Did you say you could start homework this Saturday, this homework?
Is the homework 2, not this homework, not homework 1. I know, I'm sorry. Oh,
They want to
that's a good question. You're thinking,
gotta go through the pain of,
yeah.
of UX design.
It's that philosophical question of, do you know what evil is if you don't know what good is, or, you know, vice versa. It's like, I have no idea, right? So before you can enjoy Bootstrap and all of its, you know, fruits that it bears for you, you can't, you know, you got to go through the misery that is regular CSS. Homework 2 might have Bootstrap. I don't know. Yeah, Homework 2 does. So it gets easier, folks. Trust me. Any questions on Bootstrap before we go ahead and move into, yeah?
So, quick question. Is there other websites that also use Bootstrap? Like, does Bootstrap only have the themes, or can you go to another website and make themes for Bootstrap?
Like generators and stuff?
Yeah.
Here, I found one. Bootstrap Magic.
Okay.
Create your theme. I just literally Googled Bootstrap theme generator. And so it has every component, and you'll literally just choose the colors probably, and it'll give you the CSS. So,
So what's
yeah.
this called again?
This one right now is, peacock.github.io, Bootstrap Magic. I don't know. Just Google Bootstrap Magic. I'll link this to you here in Slack if you want to use it for custom colors. Don't use it in Homework 1, or Stephanie will take points off. Okay, cool. Any other questions on that? What's up?
So when you put that link in your HTML, it always pulls the code from the website, like from the Bootstrap website.
So, that's a good question. Yes and no. It doesn't technically pull it from the Bootstrap website, The CDN is a special server somewhere in the world that has this code, and you're literally getting it from there.
So if for some reason the Bootstrap website went down, like your stuff would.
Here's the beauty of a content delivery network. It's never going to go down because it's not one machine you're talking to. It's a network of machines. So there's probably 1,000 of them out there in America alone that have this code on it. And what happens with those networks and why they're good is I go to ping one of them. Say I go to the one that happens to be in Arizona. It's the closest, so naturally it's going to be the fastest, you would think, right? That one's down. Okay, go to California. Get that. You're good. So that's the other beauty of CDN. It's never going to go down. If it goes down, it's probably you or the world is ending, so who cares, right? You know, so, yeah, Russia, Putin decided to come bomb all the CDNs for Bootstrap. I don't know. This is his first target. So yeah, I linked that out. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do a partner activity. Do it with someone next to you, 3 people. I don't really care. It's number 11, the Bootstrap demo. I'll pull up the instructions. Go, go, go. All right, working with someone close to you, navigate to the Twitter Bootstrap website. Then copy the link for the Bootstrap CSS file, that CDN link, into your HTML. Look through Bootstrap CSS components list and incorporate at least 3 elements into your page. Go ahead and Slack us a screenshot when you're done. Make sure you first include that Bootstrap CSS link before any other CSS and inside of your head, right? So that you can actually use it. If you finish early before the 15 minutes is up, help out other people, talk with others. Cannot forget that link, no.
That one that has all the different buttons on it, like it says like primary, secondary, CSS page with all the colors.
Yeah.
Is it just the one you want? Like it was like, oh yeah, primary.
Yeah, if you did primary and secondary, I don't know which one would win.
Alright.
You just get something random.
And that also goes in the head, right?
Yeah, the link goes in the head, but remember, those are classes on your components, your HTML elements.
Okay.
It's awesome, huh?
Actually, that is the coolest thing. These guys at Twitter know what's up. It's almost like Facebook.
Yeah, they just sort of blended their own magic to the process.
Facebook would keep loading as you kept going down and it was a static page.
Probably just pull up the homework 2 on this machine so you don't gotta plug in and all that since I'm already recording and everything.
Yeah, that's fine.
So that way I can still be streaming and like Andy can see how well.
Did he come back and say he's on?
He's streaming right now, but he's also coming to class tomorrow. So I already talked to Daniel and all that, so he's good.
What do we do for him on
Mark him. Daniel's gonna ping me tomorrow, and I'll mark him as here. Yeah. What's up, Jesse? drop-down menu. So Jesse just brought up a good point. If you want to use that drop-down menu that has all the cool stuff, you need JavaScript, so don't use that one.
I wouldn't need these. But that's what I couldn't
Yeah, if
figure
you're
out.
trying to do boring buttons, just rename your classes and they'll go to maybe like see how you have the same class names here and here. So yeah, if you rename the classes down here, it won't pull from Bootstrap, and then it'll just go to whatever.
Okay,
boring
that's
stuff.
what I was confused. I was like, well, why am I putting this button? I thought that.
Oh no,
Yeah,
the
see,
button is just saying.
Yeah, so I can put those actual Bootstrap lines anywhere on the page. So I used to be like
Once the link is in the header, then you can apply that style anywhere in the And if you do what you did and you just don't change the class name, you don't apply it and not know you did it right.
No, okay.
You just copied one that had the class name in it.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. Thank you. I got it. Yeah, I need Bootstrap.
Yeah, that's why that first week is literally that's why it's in there. You gotta go through the pain to understand the payoff. And I mean, you still have to deal with the HTML, so you still have to know that part and deal with it.
Seems like you can do that easily with links like W3 schools and stuff. You got HTML built.
Yeah. To me, it was always the CSS.
To like all the different like here to here, from there to there, a certain size, it's like so much.
Yeah.
How would you know?
And if you stroll through that,
Oh yeah, so you can put whatever you want your button
Yeah.
details in there.
You can see all the things they have, and you can also, like, they have a full grid, like, say you want a full table, rows, columns, everything, it'll say, here's what you use and how you use it
Okay.
to add a grid to your website.
For like a layout, if I want to send it. Okay.
Yeah, and they have, I mean, everything.
It's like a website template. It's like a
It's-
Yeah, right now they don't have
People
any
just use it as a reference sometimes.
Use what is it?
Examples, for example, what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's totally normal if people don't really actually type out the whole thing instead of just
Oh yeah, you're talking about within like the HTML? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
get everything typed out.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's, you're gonna have, once you get started professionally, you'll have other HTML to write with usually.
Yeah, so we have our own resources that are UX library. And
Like me.
we make our own stuff from scratch. Like every other application that we run, so all of our URs drop down or whatever. But we do all of those filing manually so that they.
Alright, so let's say for example I use that, right? So boring buttons are about the same about the class now.
So the company I work for, we build software for you.
Am I putting those in?
Oh, so just the way you did before, you would add another link up here that would be a reference to your CSS.
Okay, so my so say if I were to do that, that do right here, right? So, link. I'll try to get to the button, right?
Are you talking, do you want to do,
So like all the button goes somewhere.
do you want the style like what we did in the demo? Do you want it, the style right in there, or do you want to create your own CSS file?
Yeah.
Well, so I want to keep the design that I just pulled from Bootstrap,
Yeah.
and then now I want to attach like
Or I work on
just
it,
takes
it's all
that to
basically takes
So I added the button, just fine. So like what happens if I put it in?
Oh, I
Am I
see.
putting the actual
Gotcha.
so I'm gonna take this.
Yeah, I was just thinking those in there. Are you trying to add hyperlinks to these?
Oh, you got the JavaScript in there? Nice. Good work, man.
Yeah. Offhand, I don't remember the syntax. So go Google
I knew this stuff was this stuff was before.
normally the button like to submit data in a form.
Yeah. And
But there
Trying
may
to
be
teach
a way to
myself
do
all
it.
this JavaScript. That's why I took this class. I'm gonna spend 3 months trying to teach myself Angular and
yeah, you kind of jumped in head first if you went for all of that. Yeah. That's a big jump.
Add like an HTML tag to a button.
I mean, it's not.
Like go to something and take it to a link. But I don't know what the syntax is.
Yeah, but it's a lot to do on your own, you know.
That's
Having
what I don't-
a little bit
that's
of
why I don't know that
yeah,
syntax.
having someone to at least kind of help guide you, it just makes it more directed, you know. So
But there may be a way to put a link on it. I don't know. I have to look it up.
I'll break it and figure it out.
And you can always, again, go back to just doing it with regular HTML and standard CSS, figure it out, and then go, well, how do I do
nice, seen some good stuff coming in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's almost like using
Yeah.
two separate.
Trying to manage the
Side
file.
Basically just have the layout and then the other one's connected to all the like this is like everything.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't touch on it in here, but they talked about it in the Microsoft classes. That, HTML was originally created to share for research documentation. That's how it was originally used. And then they started to add on things like, cascading file sheets to give that content a little more, interest. But that's what it was originally. Yeah, you did for just HTML, they didn't need it, they're just typing up, unless they needed to add a picture or something to it, they didn't really need anything fancy.
Yeah. That's crazy cool though.
That's about how.
It's really not really new. It's like some new stuff.
But even if you
Pretty much nothing about you.
Seen a lot of good stuff coming in the Slack channel.
Buttons are really small. So you could like build a full website in like 2 months.
It's a little optimistic, but yeah, you could do the layout pretty quick.
I could build my own social media network.
Maybe at the end of class we'll talk. You tell me how you feel then.
I had the opportunity to shadow with our development team up in our development office.
Where do you work?
It's called Digital Fish, right?
Okay.
In Old Town Scottsdale. We do like, they have a whole bunch of different technologies that they're working on.
Okay.
He's like showing me stuff, like building like a server, like backend system that they're using to generate reports.
Yeah.
On an email template. And I was like, wow, like that's next level right there.
You'll be at that kind of stuff by the end of the boot camp.
Is that your master's?
Yep.
I remember watching mine. One of the masters I seen.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's pretty sick, dude.
Was it a marketing?
It's pretty sick. I mean, it's okay. It's not great though.
Like a, was it like a big company?
It's about 200. I mean, I don't love it, but I hate it. You know, yeah. It's just legit.
Okay. How are we all feeling? Just 5 on this stuff. We're getting there, yeah. We're getting good numbers on this one. Nice. I like it. I like it. Cool. Okay. Let's go ahead and review it. Let me go and open that code. Oh, here it is. Boom. Boom. So review for this one's just kind of like putting in the CDN link, right? So we need that CDN link that we can get from that home page. Right there. You need it in your head, right? And then we have a bunch of regular H1s, and we have some buttons that we want to make primary button, danger button, make them large. These are just some example components we can put in here. Let's go ahead and open this HTML inside of the browser. So here are some non-fancy, ugly, boring buttons that no one cares about, and here are some super fancy, amazing buttons that you get paid $75 an hour to make. It's the good stuff, right? So, yeah, this is just a good example. There's a lot of good stuff on Slack that everyone was sharing too. So, it seemed like most people are pretty comfortable with the Bootstrap side of things, right? It's pretty fancy. Does anyone want to remind us where this CSS is coming from? Coming from the CDN, right? It's coming from the internet, exactly. There's a server that will never go down. Why is it .min in this case?
Minimize the file.
To make the file small, make it quick to load, all of that fun stuff. And how do we know what CSS classes we can use? Yeah, we got to Google it, basically. Google it. Look at the docs, the getbootstrap.com. Look at the docs, look through the components, and find out what you can use. Go find that button, and figure out how you want to use that button, right? We're actually, like, blowing through class.
Why is your CDN link different than one of their websites?
Well, this one is...
4.0.
So this one is the one that just came with this example. So it's outdated. And it also doesn't have, like, the origin stuff and, like, the other integrity SHAs and stuff like that.
They changed, like, the beginning, it's, like, stack path now or something.
Yeah, they have, it's a different CDN provider, so they probably have old versions on Max CDN, and then they have StackPath as the new CDN to replace the old CDN. Probably, like, money or something, who knows. Yeah, actually, we crushed through this class. So, is there anything anyone wants to readdress? The homework? The homework 1? With Bootstrap? Okay, nice. Lucky you, that's homework 2. So, you get to do that, but it's another homework. Cool. Well, let me open up homework 2. We're going to take a look at that, and then we'll spend about 15-20 minutes. Anyone who has any questions on anything we've seen today, we can go over it again, and then if we're done, I guess. So let's go ahead. I'll pull up that homework. It is in class content, right? And I'll pull it over.
That is it. I was wondering how you're doing that, getting to stuff, and then...
Yeah, I gotta drag it like opposite though. Super weird. So.
All right. So I'm just gonna go over homework 2 really quick. So there's 2 pieces to this assignment. There's a Bootstrap related piece and a non-Bootstrap related piece. So before we get too far into this, is everyone able to get the GitLab content down onto their machines? Like, have you actually cloned it down? Everyone can do that successfully? Okay. And you know that at the beginning of every week you should pull the latest so that you can get each week's content? Okay. I see nodding heads. That's good. So we've covered a lot of material between HTML and CSS and now Bootstrap, GitHub. So if you're not picking it up, you don't feel comfortable, 100% comfortable with all of it right now, don't worry, because you're going to continue to see it in the weeks to come.
Next week we're going to dive into JavaScript, so you'll see less of the HTML and CSS, which based on your reaction to Bootstrap, I'm going to guess everyone's pretty happy about, at least the CSS portion of it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the actual homework instructions. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but the idea is you're going to create 2 GitHub repos, one for each assignment. The first assignment is your Bootstrap assignment. So you will basically, inside your Bootstrap portfolio, you'll create these files. You'll use Bootstrap to do the layout for the site. And then there's a bonus in here as well. If you finish that and you feel like you want to do some more, you can. The Bootstrap solution should minimize use of media queries. And then once you're done with all of it, you want to deploy it. So you remember we did the github.io site. So you want to actually deploy your site, and we're going to ask you to submit a link for the deployed site and the repo source, okay? And that's true for both of these. So the second assignment is a no Bootstrap assignment. You're going to take the basic portfolio from your first homework, and you're going to paste the files into this second folder called responsive portfolio. Make sure that you don't copy over the .get or .getignore content if you have that in place. You only want like your source files. And then you'll go through and you'll basically lay out your responsive portfolio according to the instructions. And again, I'm not going to read through all of this for you. You can do that. So that's pretty much the content of the assignment. So basically you want to try to replicate, as close as you can based on the instructions we're asking for. If you have any questions at all, whether it's on this homework or anything else, please ask. We can already, as TAs and instructors, obviously see there are people that are comfortable asking questions and people that are a little more quiet and they're just doing their thing, and that's fine. If you're just doing your own thing and you feel confident and you're making it through, wonderful. But if you're quiet and you're struggling, please, please, please come talk to us, and we can try to work with you. We can pair you up with someone. We want you to succeed at what you're doing. It's important to us, so please make sure that you're reaching out for help if you need it. Okay, any questions?
Can you scroll up just
Oh,
to make
sorry.
sure that I'm in the right section?
Oh, to the top you mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
That's not available.
No,
It is. So he pulled it up in GitHub in our content instructions. That's why I asked about GitLab. If you are either accessing GitLab or if you have it pulled down to your machine, it should be in your GitLab.
Okay, yeah, it is. Just
Okay.
wanna make sure it's
Yeah, it's the same. We're just looking at it from a different spot. Any other questions?
This one's due next Saturday.
Yes, and this is due next Saturday. Homeworks are going to always be due on Saturday, it sounds like. So let's for the 11th,
Before class
I
or
think.
after class?
It'll be 11:59 p.m.
11:59.
Yeah.
It'll always be due 11:59 p.m. Saturday.
Okay, so
There you go.
before Sunday.
Before Sunday, yes. and you will find that deadline applies in the professional world too. As long as it's there by Monday morning, you're good.
If it's Sunday morning, you're late.
Yeah, if it's Sunday morning, you're late on your homeworks. Yes, absolutely.
I want to get it done before that.
Yeah.
Depends on your boss's time zone too.
Yes.
Your boss is in Japan, you're in big trouble if
Yeah.
if you should load it up on Sunday night.
Any other questions? Okay. Are we done? Did you have more to cover?
Yeah. Since we're done so early, I want to go over pseudo selectors a little bit more, for like 10 more minutes, and then we'll kind of go through. So
Okay.
we're just gonna bootstrap our own little example here with them, and go from there. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Awesome. All right, so let's just go ahead and we'll just keep this open and doors. Okay. My favorite HTML file name, test.html. We're going to go ahead and insert our snippet, do our thing. We'll go ahead and add our main.css in here. All right. So,
Hey, Carson, can I steal a moment because I did forget something?
absolutely you can.
If for some reason you didn't complete the full portfolio, or the, not the wireframe, but the actual portfolio. If you didn't finish that, or you don't finish it by Saturday for homework 1, when you start homework 2, tell us if you need that solution, and we can provide it to you, so you're not starting from a deficit of not even having the basic portfolio numbers.
Absolutely.
So probably by Saturday then, right?
You can tell us Monday. It'd be enough.
We're not going to give it to you until Sunday.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
By then the homework has to be in.
Yeah.
But
We
if
won't.
you get to Sunday and you don't have anything,
Trying to get the template before the home. I see. Nice. Clever strategy.
Hey, can we get a copy of that even if you
Yeah.
so we can look at what the solution was, look at before.
Well, it'll be in the GitLab repo. So Monday when you come in, we'll make sure that there's the template, and everyone can start from there if they want. Also, I had a question earlier from Tony, I think, right, where you were designing your own kind of portfolio, and you wanted to know.
Yeah, the third page.
Yeah. So Tony had a question, and this is for you to answer, Stephanie. You and Chris to decide, but. He was kind of veering off the design path and kind of doing his own thing for the portfolio. It was still well designed and all that, but he wanted to know how much leeway he gets in that regard. Do you want it to be strict to the spec, or are you okay with him having creative freedom?
yeah, I mean, I'm going to rely heavily on what is in the homework instructions. If the homework instructions tell you to replicate the pictures as closely as possible, that is what you should be doing. If you have a different background because you picked a different PNG file, we're not going to mark you off for that because I think part of the instructions say go use this source and pick a background. So that we won't, if it's in the instructions, that's what we're going to rely on. So make sure you read the instructions because that's what we're going to do.
The first one is really primarily about layouts, right? So they want to see that you can emulate a layout and you understand how the layouts work with the basic CSS and basic HTML, right? So get that part done. If you want to change the colors, if you want to change the images like she's saying, go nuts. But try to match as much as you can, especially in the layout, because it's really important. Cool. So, I linked to this, I think, in the chat, right? I'll link to it again because it probably got buried. But this is the list of the pseudo classes, pseudo selectors that you can use. This is like all of them that exist. They're on this MDN. So if you need a reference or you want to see some examples, this is the place to go. So let's just look at focus really quick. So in this example, we have an input type. So that would be like a text box, right? And when we focus it, we want the color to be red. We want it to change. So how would we do that? We would have our input, so our raw element selector, and then you have a colon, and then you have the pseudo selector. So in this case, it is what we are focusing, right? The input we're focusing. Now, one thing I didn't explain very well when we did pseudo selectors, I was using my own custom classes, but you can use any of the normal selectors that you would use in CSS. That means you can use classes, you can use IDs with the hashtag, right? And you can use elements like input. You can use the child selector stuff. Like there's all kinds of things you can do and still use pseudo selectors. So it's an important thing to note that start with your basic selector, a input dot my class hashtag, this element or whatever, and then add the pseudo selectors after that to determine what you want to do. So that's just an important distinction. And like I said, this is a really great, this pseudo classes article on MDN is great because you can find all of them. You can look at a specific one. It'll tell you how it works, so on and so forth. Focus, focus is when you'll tab through with the keyboard and focus the element right, it'll change. So with that in mind, this is a great resource. Continue to use it. Let's go ahead and open up our little example. Now let's try this input one, right? So input type is going to be text. We'll make the value, we'll just make a placeholder in there. And it's going to be enter your name. And it's self-closing, okay? So we can go ahead and get rid of this JavaScript file. We don't need that yet. We'll look at the main CSS. And we're going to add our focus selector, just like we saw in that example. And we're going to go ahead and make the color green. And the background, it always goes to background attachment. I have no idea why. We're going to make the background yellow. Really heinous color combinations. I'm good at that. That's what I'm good at. we'll go ahead and we'll open this in Chrome. And if I focus in, you can see it changes. Okay? So it's the pseudo selectors coming in. Now, I want to get a little bit fancier. I want to have all these inputs. I'm going to have 5 or 6 inputs, but I have an email one maybe. And when it's an email one and I focus it, I'm going to make the color red. I'm going to make the background. We'll make it some like grayish color. What was that one? Oh my gosh. Okay, we'll go ahead and do it. So we're going to go ahead and make another input. And this bad boy is going to be our email, right? We'll do a placeholder for good measure. Enter your email. Let us go ahead and find our beautiful turquoise email version. So again, I had a pseudo selector, but this one was more specific, right? It went ahead and let us specify that when it's an email type and not just a regular one, we're going to do something different. So let's take it to another level. And this is the selector specificity we're getting into now. You're going to see a bunch of inputs that all follow the same form, but for some reason, different ones follow different color schemes because of how they're being assigned things, right? So classes have a higher specificity than inputs of a derived type. Inputs of a derived type have a higher specificity than a generic input. And then IDs have the highest specificity, right? So we're going to go ahead and call this my input. And we're going to change the focus. And it's going to be color black with a background of fuchsia. It's getting better. We're going to do this again. We're going to make this one a phone number. They actually have one for that called Tel, which is crazy. Go ahead and refresh our regular focus, our email, but that one didn't work. Why didn't that one work?
Because we didn't add the class to the...
We didn't add the class. Good catch. So we're going to go ahead and take their class. Like I said, there is no order to these, so I can go ahead and add my class wherever I want. Easy peasy. We'll go ahead and refresh. Fuchsia. So there's an input of type email. I can make this type email and it would still go ahead and it would still be fuchsia. And let's take the last level of specificity then. We'll show it with IDs and show how we can take this focus and so this is my input, and just for good measure, we'll make it your other email. Change this to ID. It's an email. Go ahead and refresh. We have our yellow for our regular input, our disgusting turquoise color for our email, our even more disgusting fuchsia for our specific class, and then we have our indigo for our email type, but it has an ID.
For a colorblind person, we'll never be able to see it.
Yeah, it's a nightmare as is, right? But we can make it worse, I guess. Any questions on what we just did? Do the pseudo selectors make a little bit more sense?
I have a further question.
Yeah, sure.
Can you make any attribute, like in the CSS, like input, can you do like input value instead of input type equals email? Or like input placeholder equals something? Or you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. I'm pulling up an article.
I could probably test it too, but I just was wondering. So then you can make like every button
So I'm going to link this out. This is another MDN article because you should always use this. And this is a more advanced article explaining some of the selectors and the selector combinations you can use and what they do. But attribute selectors. The attribute name equals the value. Or there's a star. Or there's a $sign. And they all have different values. And you can go to the attribute selectors yourself and you can see what they do. So yeah, href equals this specific website? Absolutely. So yes, great question. There's a lot you can do with CSS selectors. A huge amount you can do. And again, this is another one of those bittersweet things where you can do all this crazy stuff with CSS selectors that no one's going to understand. And it's kind of a nightmare. And then figuring out the precedence of things and the specificity is hard, but you can be creative, and man, you can get a lot done with just CSS without even bringing in JavaScript. So that was a good question.
So if you put a attribute on a class,
okay,
and then put an attribute on an ID, and have a element that has both that class and that ID, the ID will take precedence, but as long as the class and the ID don't overwrite the same styles, it would include both, right?
Absolutely. Why don't we try that? That's a great question. So basically we have a class and we have an ID. And let's go ahead and make this one will have a width of 200 pixels. And this one is going to go ahead and have a height of 150 pixels. And actually I need to go ahead and add the myInput class to this one that has the ID. Right? So now it has both. Correct? Go ahead and get rid of this. Go back to Chrome. Where are you, Chrome? Let me pull up that. Come on. Come on. Oh man, it didn't like my sizing. Oh, there it is. It took a little while. Oh my god. Oh yeah, because it's on focus. So pseudo selectors to win again. So you can see the width changed and the height changed. Both of them changed.
On the previous one, just the width is going to change.
Just the width changed. See how it got wider? So yes, it has both. So again, the idea of cascading styles still holds, but the one with most precedence wins if they have the same competing styles. Alright, any questions on this? Any more questions on anything that we've gone over at all in the class thus far? Oh God as in, yeah, I have a ton, or oh God as in, I don't even want to think about it? A little bit of both? Okay, so here's the deal. We're done 30 minutes early. I'll stay till 10 if there's people who want the help and want to hang out. Otherwise, go home. I'll see you all on Saturday. Also, thank you, Nikki, for helping us out this week. She'll be here every now and then. Let's give her a round of applause.
Are you teaching this Saturday? Or
I'm this Saturday, yeah.
Oh, you guys alternate?
Yeah, we'll alternate. So I'm this Saturday. It'll be Daniel. Me.
Yeah, sure. I have it on my mobile. Thursday class?
He's Tuesday, Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, I think I downloaded it. I mean, I had it downloaded from
I can't do it.
What happened to that idea for the tables, too?
I just texted Jason earlier today, so we'll see what